And I just randomly posted on TikTok and I was like, hey, can somebody tell me how to do a game day?
Higher or lower Emily Fox edition? I don't know why I'm scared. You're literally answering this. So.
I am also scared, so we're in it together.
Welcome back to the Arsenal Humans Fanzone with me, Luce. I'm super excited because I feel like I get so many guests on where I get to talk about how great the community is, especially in terms of Arsenal women, and I feel like today's guest is another perfect example. But also, Brigitte is my first Gooner that is from America, so I'm very excited because I feel like this just shows how big Arsenal is, but also the global impact it's had and how's it actually drawn so many people in. That's basically what I want to get into, so I'm hoping throughout this episode we all learn a little bit more about the global reach that Arsenal has. But first question that I ask every single guest is why Arsenal? So Brigitte, tell me, why do you support Arsenal?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I think the way that I chose Arsenal is kind of a roundabout way of getting here. So, as you said, I'm an American Gooner, so as many can expect, I'm a big U.S. Women's National Team fan. And I was really, really locking in during the 2023 World Cup. And then that really didn't go very well for the U.S. Women's National Team. They lost in the round of 16 to Sweden, tragically. But I didn't want to stop following the tournament, so I picked other teams to support. And so I picked Australia because that was really fun, and it was the home team, and they're having a great tournament. And then I also, sort of around that time, Tobin Heath and Kristen Press were doing a podcast, and they had Leah Williamson on because she was obviously out with her ACL. And she was talking about the Lionesses and the team. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll start following them. So I followed both of those teams throughout the tournament and had a lot of fun doing it. And then the tournament ended and I thought, well, I want to watch these players more. At the time, basically none of them were playing in the NWSL, which is the American League. And so I was like, well, I guess that means I need to start following the WSL and figure out a team. And so I really was between Chelsea and Arsenal just because
Yeah, a tough one.
Right. But I loved watching Sam Kerr play for Australia and all that. And then obviously Millie Bright was captain of England for that tournament. And so it was a big sort of draw to Chelsea. But then Arsenal was doing really, really good storytelling through their social media about the comebacks of Beth and Viv and Leah and the ACLs. And just the Alessia Russo of it all. It was all... Their social media leading up to the season was really, really interesting. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be in person at these games ever. So I thought then. And so I was like, I just really like the storytelling that's around Arsenal. And so that's how I chose them. And it has become very clear to me that this was the right place for me to be for so many reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into some of those.
We definitely will, because I feel like there's so many different reasons why so many people love Arsenal, why they support them, and I feel like it's a common thing of what you're saying with social media and how I think Arsenal, one thing they did so well, I've had a few guests on here talk about it from the Euros, the 22 Euros with the Lionesses, and obviously the most recent one when we won as well. I feel like the thing they've done so well is capitalise on the Arsenal players they've got, and I just feel like obviously it all comes back down to this idea of community when you're talking, and for everything you're saying, you can tell you're so passionate about the women's side in particular, and obviously for your national team as well as club level. But for you, I just love hearing the answers that everyone gives me to this question. But can you sort of just describe what the community means to you and what the Arsenal community has actually given you?
Yeah, so I definitely can. And to me, it's something that's really, really important in ways that I certainly never expected. So my sort of first real experience with the community itself was I was finishing up my PhD in the spring of 2024, and I decided for my graduation trip that I was going to take myself to London. I went with one of my really, really good friends, and I was like, I want to go to an Arsenal game. That's what I want to do to celebrate all of this. And so we planned a trip, and I just randomly posted on TikTok, and I was like, hey, can somebody tell me how to do a game day? Because it really is so different there than it is here in the U.S. And so I was like, what does a game day look like? What should I expect? What should I do? What's all... And 6 different people messaged me, inviting me to just come hang out with them and their friends. I was blown away by the number of people who just reached out. They're like, oh my gosh, let's go get lunch before. Let's have a drink after. And I was like, whoa, okay, like this is so fun and so exciting. So I think just off the bat, it was like very clear that other people within this sort of like supporters, other Gooners, were looking for community in a way that I was also looking for community. And then it really just like blossomed from there. They were like, oh, you should meet my friend who's doing this and my friend who's doing that. And it just like really grew. And it's just so cool to see so many people who are relatively similarly aged and are passionate about this and go to sporting events, women's sporting events, like every weekend, because I've never lived in a place that had like a professional women's soccer team, so that's not something that I've ever been able to do. And so it was sort of something that I was like not always that excited about because nobody else around me was excited about it, and I was just kind of like in it by myself. And that couldn't be further from the case now that I have made so many friends who are also Arsenal supporters. I've met people from like all over the world. I have friends in Australia and in England and all over the US that I've made just because we're all Arsenal supporters. And it really feels like the club wants to foster that community. Like it's not just the supporters who are looking for it. The club also seems to want to foster these things. And I just think that's really cool.
It's so funny you mentioned obviously how once you meet one person then it's almost like you spiral into meeting a whole group of friends. And I mean that's literally how we ended up meeting through obviously Laura, who I've had on the pod in one of the earlier episodes, and it's just through knowing that one person you get a mutual, and it just it's a bit like it just spirals into knowing pretty much everyone. And I feel like loads of people will be able to resonate with that who's watching. But if you're watching and you're like, oh, I kind of want to know what that's like, just honestly push yourself through it, because like just push yourself to go to that game and just experience and just chat to people, because you'll find people that are aligned with you, whether that's because they just have that passion for Arsenal, or if it goes a bit deeper and you're in similar stages of your life, or you have similar interests outside of football. And it's just so nice that football can give us that community. And I feel like for me, like obviously when you're just saying about your first game, it can be so daunting to actually go to a game. And I know when I used to go with my dad, so I felt like I almost, when I was 10 years old, we'd have our own routine of, we'd get on the train, we'd get on the bus and the train and the tube, and then we'd walk, obviously, because it was at Boreham Wood in Meadow Park. So like that 2-hour journey, we sort of had our own routine of the meals and stuff. And then I almost felt like I had to re-enter when I got a bit older, because suddenly from the age of 10 to 20, I've seen massive growth in the game, which is so good. But now we're playing at the Emirates, so it's a slightly different routine, whether I'm going with my dad, whether I'm going with friends that I've met through Arsenal. It just feels like a completely different vibe. And like you're saying, it's hard to know what to do and what not to do. But can you just like talk me through your first game that you experienced? Obviously you said you were sort of reaching out, and it's so good that obviously on socials that people reach out and they're like, oh, come do this, come do that. But what did it look like for you, and how did you actually feel? Because it can be so scary, but obviously it's so worth it.
Yeah, I do think that I was like nervous about it because I just didn't know what to expect. But when I came to London for that, I was there for like a week, and we went to a Sunday game, but we were there from like Wednesday to Tuesday or something, so it was like towards the end of the week. So I had already like been in London and had fallen in love with it. I love that place. And so I was like, okay, and I had planned with some friends that we were going to meet and have a Nando's for lunch before we went, and I was like, this feels like what I'm hearing about people doing all the time. So it felt really cool to just be sort of like immediately immersed in the things that everyone else was already doing. And so I really, though I was a little bit nervous about it, it became very unintimidating really quickly. They were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like grab lunch, then we'll walk over and maybe we'll catch the fan walk, just depending on how long lunch takes. If not, we'll just like go to the stadium, watch them warm up, we'll each go to our seats, we'll meet after, we'll go to the Tollington for a drink, and then like maybe we'll go for dinner after. And I was like, okay. And it just, I feel like that was so nice. And the game that I went to, they played Leicester at home at the Emirates, which was so cool because that was the first season where they were playing all of their WSL games there. And to see that many people there for a game that season didn't really matter that much was really, really cool. And I am like 95% sure, but I always second guess myself, that it was Laura Wienreuther's return was the game that I was there, which was really cool and exciting. And just seeing how at that time, and I think it's shifted a little bit now, but at that time how the players were interacting with the fans, and like after the game, Lotto was like 15 feet away from me just like talking to some fans casually, and I was like, I'm sorry, like this doesn't happen in the US. Like US fans are not allowed to be that close to the players because they cannot be trusted. And so it's just so fascinating to me. I was so surprised to just see how like casually they were interacting and they were signing things, and I know some of that has changed a little bit just for like security reasons and stuff as the game has grown, but I was just shocked and just like in awe the whole game. Like I just couldn't really believe that I was there and that it was happening, because I watch every game at home. I'm like setting alarms for 7 o'clock in the morning to watch the noon kickoffs, like after a night out with friends, and they're like, you're getting up to watch the game, and I'm like, yeah, I am. Like it'll be fine. It'll be worth it.
My priority.
Right, like I can take a nap later. It's not a problem. But just like that kind of stuff. So to actually like be there was really, really cool. And then I also came over just this past January, and I got to go to 2 games at Boreham Wood. And I think that that's like so interesting, because I definitely say it like I got to go to Boreham Wood because we don't have stadiums that small in the US where players of this caliber are playing and you're like that close to the pitch, as you guys would call it, and like that like in it, like to be that close to these players and just like watching them play. And it's really just like feels like down at like the local, like I don't know, kids park is like how it really felt to me. And so I really wanted to be able to see a game there before they stopped playing there, because that sort of like intimate atmosphere doesn't exist here, and so it's just like so different. And so I got to go to the Villa game. It was an FA Cup game, and then I was also unfortunately at the Man United League Cup game as well.
Yeah. Can't win them all. You can't win them all. It's actually really interesting that you say how almost for you, you're like, oh, it's amazing that we're going to these smaller stadiums because you get to be more intimate with the players and like you get to see them obviously close up, whereas you wouldn't if you're at the Emirates as much. I know obviously you're saying with security, like things have definitely changed.
Of course.
But it's so interesting that for you, you're like, oh, this is like almost a luxury, like you get to be that close. When I think back to the growth of when I used to sit at Meadow Park when I was like 10 years old, there'd be maybe about 50 fans, and now we're able to sell out the Emirates Stadium with about 60,000 fans and get a good turnout. Even like at the weekend I went and we were playing West Ham, so a relegating side potentially like down the end of the table, and you're still getting about 25,000 people. It's amazing to see the growth, and if anything, going back to Meadow Park is a bit regressive, some would say, but for you obviously it was such a new experience, so it's actually so nice how everyone can have their different interpretations. And I mean, you mentioned a lot there about obviously your dedication to watching it. That's something I think that kind of gets a little bit overlooked when we talk about that reach of Arsenal, how we're able to go global and we're able to get so many different fans watching it from all around the world. It's sort of just like, oh, we expect everyone to watch it and to show up, but for us it's like, okay, for me, if it's a 4pm kickoff, it's a 4pm kickoff. I can go obviously after work, or I can do whatever, whereas obviously for you, you've got that dedication. So I feel like that's another thing that just shows the passion. You couldn't wake up at those silly times in the morning or basically have no sleep if you've been out the night before if you didn't love the game. And I feel like that just obviously shines through. And I feel like you mentioned so many different names then. Obviously you said like Lotta, you said obviously Vane Reuter, who now is no longer with us at the club. But just out of the few years that you've obviously been watching Arsenal, do you have any favourite names, or can you whistle it down to just a few names that you're like,
yes,
yeah, I love these players?
I think I'll shortlist 3. Leah Williamson has to be one of them, because she, just like listening to her talk about, it was England, but obviously Tobin Heath is a huge Arsenal fan, played there for a very, very short minute. They also talked a little bit about Arsenal and club, and so she is like why I sort of dove back in, at least this sort of deeply, so she'll always be quite top of my list. I'm a huge Beth Mead fan. I just think she's incredible. Nice. All of the adversity that she has overcome, both personal, physical, like being written off by coaches, all of that. I've read her book like 3 or 4 times. Big fan. And then obviously Emily Fox, because she is...
I was sort of waiting for that one.
Right now she's my like, I don't know, gold star favorite player at the moment, because what she does week in and week out for club and for country, every time she shows up, she is so consistent, and like she's like always at a 9, and then every now and again she'll show up and be like the 10 out of 10, and it's just unbelievable. And I just think she's so consistent, and I think she's incredibly taken for granted because she is always so consistent that we just expect her to do so many of the things that she does. And I'm like, you guys, that recovery run that she just made was like world class, and we're all like, well, there she goes again, she's doing it again, you know. But yeah, big Emily Fox fan over here.
I kind of, yeah, with the others, I mean, completely agree. Obviously, with Williamson, I think she's so good at what she talks about, using her platform away from the pictures, obviously, on it as well. And yeah, Beth Mead, the same sort of scenario of she speaks out, and obviously she's been through different injuries. I mean, they both have. But for me, I was expecting, obviously, you to say Emily Fox because she is, in the current squad, the obviously only American.
Yes.
So I feel like, obviously, you've got connection to both the national team as well as club level. But just obviously with Emily Fox, like just diving in a bit deeper, when you talk about her, I think it's so true what you just said then, that a lot of people do overlook how consistent she is. And I mean, I feel like as a defender, you're not going to get as much praise as you do like the likes of Russo. That's a player that I'd like to know actually how many shirts are sold with her name on the back, because I feel like that's a household name. Everyone knows Russo. And a lot of people know Emily Fox, but they might not even realise how much she shows up. And I feel like definitely that's something that you see when in that final, obviously you saw all the defenders celebrating. When I say that final, obviously I mean the Champions League. I just realised I just add no context to it. I feel like it's just...
I mean, I was right there with you. I think about that.
Okay, amazing.
Constantly. So yeah,
as long as we're on the same page, and then that's completely cool. But I do feel like that final was obviously another example of where you see those defenders and they're celebrating a tackle as if it's the winning moment, as if they've just scored a goal like a striker. And I love when we get to see obviously that happen. But yeah, just talk to me a bit more about Emily Fox and like what it actually means obviously to have an American in the team, but also regardless of that, just her ability at the back and what she actually means to the club.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because she really had her like breakout moment at the 2023 World Cup, which was clearly not a good tournament for the US, and so I think it gets really overlooked. Again, how good she was. She was like the only player who actually had a good tournament. It was like her and Naomi Girma were like the only two who really did well, and so I think that was sort of her like moment. And then she signed with the club, with Arsenal. She was at North Carolina Courage, which is relatively close to where she's from, so she stayed relatively close to home, and seems to be that kind of like a little bit quiet, right? She's not like the flashiest, she's not the Beth Mead like making all of the jokes, like all of those kinds of things. She's like a little bit quieter, it seems. And then she moved over to Arsenal, and of course we had the famous like leak of her in the background, and everybody was like, who is that? And I was like, guys, that is Emily Fox. Like, you need to know who she is. She's very, very important, and she's gonna transform this team, and I firmly believe that she has. I think our back line, just based on injuries like with Leah and then with Katie Reed and all that, like obviously we've had a lot of injuries there and a lot of movement going along, but I think having someone so consistent who you know you can always rely on, who will do whatever she's asked, like you can see different strategies with her in different games where she is like way more aggressive in like overlapping runs with whoever's playing on the right wing and all of that. And then other games she's staying back and it's more of like a 3-back with her back there, and then we're pushing up the left side. Like she'll do whatever's asked of her. She can invert, she can make the overlapping runs, like she'll do anything. And then lately her contract is supposed to be up at the end of the season, and there's been lots of rumor that hers is positive and that it'll probably be renewed. And she just did one of those social media things the other day, and they were like, it was a word association thing, and they were like, what's the first thing that comes to mind whenever we say this word? And the word was Arsenal, and she said family. And that to me just like means a lot, because I was like a little nervous at first that she didn't have that many friends. And she's been like honest in interviews that the transition was actually a lot harder for her than she anticipated, and she really didn't feel like settled until like a quarter of the way through her first like full season. So it was almost like a full year after she'd been at the club. It took her a while because she went away for the Olympics, and the US did very well at the Olympics, but like England didn't qualify, you know, like many of her teammates didn't even qualify for the Olympics, so they were like in and around and potentially spending off seasons together and stuff like that, and she wasn't. And so she's been honest about that transition and how it wasn't the easiest for her, but now it really feels like she is like settled in, a core part of this, and really plays for the badge in a way that I associate with Arsenal players. Like when you have players like Leah Williamson and Lotte Wubben-Moy and Katie McCabe, like talking about how much, Kim Little, like talking about how much it means to play for the badge, you can hear her talking about it that way too. And so it, again, just signals to me this like deep loyalty that Arsenal makes you want to have for them. Like it's not hard to have.
100%. And honestly, what you're saying about like extending her contract, I'm hoping they're listening to this right now and hearing you obviously cheer for her, because I think it's so true what you're saying, that there's been so many moments where we've had to play obviously Catley, maybe a centre back, and just I feel like the pairing at the back and even the back four as a whole has been so inconsistent. It almost was like a makeshift squad when we won the Champions League, and it just felt like since then, with some players being injured, obviously Williamson out and then coming back in, and like you said with Katie Reid, the same sort of scenario, it seems like we need to definitely acknowledge these players that are consistent there and consistently sharp. So hopefully it gets extended, her contract anyways. Little bit of a teaser to the game at the end, but we're going to talk about her in a little bit.
All right.
I improvised a game, so we'll definitely yap about that at the end of this episode. But just moving now to, obviously you've spoken about a lot of players that are very transparent and honest about, like you said then with Emily Fox and her transition to coming to England, moving to a different country. We know that with Williamson and Beth Mead, they speak openly about their injuries and things they have to go through. And I feel like that sort of nicely links to your podcast, because you're a podcast that doesn't really shy away from certain topics. So obviously when I'm talking about your podcast, I'm talking about the Home Ground Pod, or our Home Ground Pod. So firstly, just getting into it, why do you want to not shy away from certain topics? Why do you want to be an advocate and use your platform in that way, when we know that it's not an expectation that anyone should have on themselves?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a reflection of how I came to the women's game. I became a big fan of soccer based on people like Abby Wambach and Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan and Sam Mewis and Becky Sauerbrunn, what I call the like golden age of the U.S. women's national team, the like 2012 to 2019-ish era is when I really started like following it really closely and understanding that what these women were doing was actually a lot more than playing soccer. And I grew up playing tennis, and so I was a female athlete, and so I understood sort of what that was like in the United States, and it's a really interesting experience. And then in the 2019, when the U.S. Women's National Team won the World Cup for the second time in a row.
Nice. Had to get that one in there.
Fourth one, second in a row. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. I think we've actually run out of time.
No, I won't be annoying about it. But after they won, you know, normally when the U.S. wins something, the fans chant like USA, USA, right? Like that's the chant that happens. But instead, the entire crowd chanted equal pay, because they had been fighting to get equal pay with the men's national team, because the men's national team is historically not very good, yet they make so much more money than the U.S. women's national team at that time. And so they had actually filed a lawsuit against U.S. soccer. The women had, under U.S. law, whatever, they were saying, you're not paying us equally, and that's illegal in the United States. So it was the people like Kristen Press, Tobin Heath, Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Becky Sauerbrunn, like they sued their own employer about this, and they won. They settled the lawsuit in 2022, so now all of the World Cup money in the like 2 years, the men's and the women's gets pooled together and divided evenly, and so they have equal pay. So that's sort of like the landscape in which I came into this, and the U.S. women's national team has been very vocal and very outspoken, at least previously, that that's part of sort of their duty of wearing the crest is talking about these things. And so I think the way that I approach it is that it is important to talk about the things that aren't easy to talk about, because they need to be talked about. And there are ways to do it like tactfully. And sometimes I do that well, and other times I probably don't. And certainly, like, I have my own biases and opinions, but I think talking about it is important, because if we expect or want women to use their platforms for these things, then why wouldn't I hold myself to that same kind of expectation, I guess? And when I decided that I wanted to start a podcast, I knew that I wasn't going to be talking about, like, analyzing the game and those kinds of things, because I didn't grow up playing soccer. I don't know that much about soccer. I've actually never played a game of 11v11. I do play in, like, a 7-a-side league and a 5-a-side league, but, like, I knew I had things to say, and it was going to be this sort of, like, more tangential to the pitch or, like, off the pitch type stuff, not necessarily, like, analysis of the games, but sort of, like, social stuff that's happening, fashion, like, other things that are happening sort of, like, around that these women are really involved in often, or are affecting the women's game in ways that I think are meaningful.
I'm hearing you speak especially about, obviously, the equal pay, when that was quite prominent, I'd say, in the media and everything, because obviously from my perspective it's a different country, and I'm like, oh, this is so good, they're so outspoken, and it can trickle down and obviously have its own effects on our country and other countries. But hearing it from someone who was obviously more personally affected, I'd say, because it's like, okay, can we aspire to play for this team, or can me and my friends, like, talk about this? And it's just really good that obviously you've channeled that and you've put it into your podcast, and actually, like, talking about different topics, because I definitely do feel like I said, there shouldn't be this expectation that people have to use their platform in this way, but if you want to do it and you're able to do it in a good way, then perfect. It's the same with anything, really. I feel like in interviews, when you hear like players talk about certain issues and you're like, okay, this is really good because now I feel seen, or I didn't think I needed to hear that today, but it just makes you feel better in yourself. So obviously so good. And I feel like ultimately I had this question and I was like, this is a bit random compared to what we've just been talking about, but why did you call it what you called it? Because I feel like obviously I have my reasonings why I named this podcast this, and I feel like it does make sense, but I just want to know, was it a long process, like from podcast host to podcast host? Did it take you a while to actually think of this name, or did it just come to you?
Yeah, it really did. And it's funny, I talk to my friends a lot about this. I actually hate naming things. I sort of refuse amongst my friends to name anything. I make them name group chats. Like, I just refuse to do it. And then I have a podcast in which I had to name it and then name an episode every week. So, but yeah, it took me a while. But what I was really, like, I wanted it to feel like this is sort of like my space that I've created. And when we're in here, like, I get to decide what we're talking about and how we're talking about things in a way that, like, when players are playing a game, like, you want the home field advantage. Like, this is our home and we sort of dictate what happens here, is kind of a vibe that I was feeling. And so I had gone through lots of iterations of titles that ranged all over, and something about our home ground felt right, and so I just went with it. And then it also took the task off of my to-do list.
Literally, that's one thing. It was so clearing, like, especially with my pod as well. I was like, okay, I kind of want to do this. What do I call it? But then I feel like it was part of the same process of being like, okay, Arsenal Humans, we're talking about Arsenal. We're talking about the humans within Arsenal. And I think, like what you're saying with your podcast, that completely reflects the inclusive space, because it's like, we're coming together as a community. And just sort of last thing on the pod, what are your sort of aspirations? Do you have any aspirations? This can be a place of manifestations in terms of the pod. Tell me.
Yeah, I think right now I'm just really having a lot of fun doing it, and I think for now that's how I want to make sure that it stays. Like, I want it to be something that I enjoy doing. I started it because I felt like I started it when I got home from the Euros, because I just felt like I had a lot of things to say, and I didn't hear people talking about a lot of the things that I was talking about with my friends, like, within the community. Like, I felt like these are probably conversations that other people are having, like, in their own little friend groups, and we could bring this to, like, a sort of potentially bigger audience or something like that. So yeah, I would love to be able to have, like, really cool guests on who are doing really fabulous things. And work's been, like, so busy lately, so I'm trying to, like, record it in the, like, few free moments that I have. So trying to coordinate with guests has not happened as much. But that is on my, like, Q2 2026 goals is to get back to getting interesting people on, because I do think having other people's perspective and not just listening to like me yap all the time is really fun. And we all have these sort of like niche interests that are like, again, like related to the women's game, but maybe not necessarily like exactly, again, like analyzing games or something like that, but are really interesting. Like I did an episode on neurodiversity with my good friend Meg from Australia, and we talked a lot about Lucy Bronze and her autism diagnosis, and Kirsten Kasperai talking about her ADHD diagnosis, and like sharing tips on her Snapchat about like how to sleep at night. And just, it personalizes these women in ways that I never could have imagined. It's like she can't sleep at night in a similar way to others of us who also have ADHD who can't sleep because our minds are wandering. Like, it's just so fascinating to feel like connection with someone who I really have no business feeling that much connection with. Like, she's a professional footballer from the Netherlands, and I'm like a girl who lives in the US, you know? So I just think it's so interesting, and I have really, really enjoyed it, and I've had some fascinating conversations with a lot of people, and so I would love to be able to continue doing that.
Ultimately, the minute you stop enjoying it, like, you should just stop. And I feel like that's sort of the same vibe I'm having with this podcast. I'm like, oh, I love it. Like, don't get me wrong, on a Tuesday it's fun when I get to sit down. I'm like, okay, what's happened the week of Arsenal? Currently I feel like we're doing all right, like both men and women as a whole doing pretty good, so it's fun to talk about. And I sort of more obviously would analyse the games and try and add like a warm-up poll and things like that to make it a bit more fun, but ultimately it is more analytical. Whereas I love doing these podcast episodes like I'm doing right now with the fan zones, where I get to talk, because like you said, it's so fun when you can hear other people's perspectives, because you're like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't think of that. Or it's just so nice to bounce off each other and then say, okay, you tell me this thing and then I'll add what I think of that. And it's just so fun. So honestly, keep doing it. What you're saying with the guests, and hopefully for the future, I'm trying to see it as well. Like, I want to get more guests on now, because I'm like, okay, I started off doing it every other Friday with guests just to build that up, and now I'm like, actually, every week, if I've got the time, like you said, with work, this feels like another part-time job to have.
Right.
But when you enjoy it, when it's your passion project, there's no reason why you can't carry on doing that as well alongside it, as long as there's not too much burnout and burning the candle at both ends, and obviously things like that as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's exciting. So I'm excited for both of us. It's so good to talk about things obviously happening away from the pitch, but also things happening on the pitch as well, which sort of is the next section of this episode that I just want to talk about this season as a whole, because I feel like, you know what, the thing that's in my head, I don't know if this is in your head right now, but it's the Champions League, because as we're filming this podcast tomorrow night, so pretty much this time tomorrow, Arsenal are going to be facing Chelsea at the Emirates. And this is like such a big game. I mean, even if we think about our friendship and how obviously we actually first met in person was that Chelsea game, where it was a pretty dominant performance from us. Like, we did pretty well. I feel like the vibe was so good in the away end, and all the chants going. I just felt like such a good atmosphere, and I'm hoping we can replicate that tomorrow in terms of the atmosphere. But do you feel like we're going to see something maybe across both legs, but especially tomorrow night, that's similar to that dominant performance? Or how do you actually feel going into it? Because head and heart are saying different things for me.
Well, my head and heart were saying different things on that day too, and I should have listened to my heart, because there was just a vibe on the day. Like, I just knew it. No, I have been saying I'm not scared of Chelsea this season in the way that I have been in previous seasons, which feels crazy to say, but I feel like the way that I think about teams, mostly because I don't know that much what I'm talking about, is based on vibes. And like, the vibe at Man City right now is like 10 out of 10. They feel like they are having the best time ever. I think the vibe at Arsenal right now is quite good as well. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens when our three Aussies are back, with the sort of like heartbreak of the Asian Cup, and hopefully we can build them back up and let them come back in pretty seamlessly. But Chelsea's vibe doesn't seem to be that positive right now, and I think of it in terms of like teams that are really, really good and not used to losing then don't know how to lose. So if they find themselves in a situation where they're not winning, they don't really know what to do. Whereas good, bad, or ugly, Arsenal has found themselves in some like not so great situations of late in the past season or two, and then been able to like come back from it in ways that I think are important to like building a successful team. And I even think of like Barcelona at the Champions League final. Like, once they were down a goal in a Champions League final, like, they didn't know what to do. That's a team that I don't think really knows how to lose, which good for them because they don't do it very often, but
not jealous
on that day. But so as far as the Chelsea over the 2 legs, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think it'll be interesting because I do think at least on the first leg, both teams are not going to be at their best. And so I think that will actually be really interesting and entertaining to see how each team sort of figures that out, whereas like Arsenal had a really dominant performance over the weekend and Chelsea did not. So I'm hoping we can carry that into tomorrow.
Fingers crossed, because honestly, like you said, I think it's really interesting that as an Arsenal fan, we don't really, like, I completely agree, we don't really see Chelsea this season especially as too much of a threat. I think obviously when we played them, we drew the first time this season in the league, and that was kind of a bit controversial because of obviously referee decisions and things like that. And then when we played them the second time, obviously away from home at Stamford Bridge, that was pretty dominant from us. So I think if we look at the league and just us playing them, but like you said, there's different players. Obviously, they've got some players injured. Since that game, we've got players injured. There'll be people returning like Sam Kerr, Ellie Carpenter. Obviously, we've got our 3 Aussies as well. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of change, maybe that we've seen recently. But it is just really interesting because I do feel like both teams have had a little bit of a mixed season, but for Arsenal, I think our only downfall has been the amount of draws we're getting. Like, I think even if I look at the league table, that's something that has sort of let us down a bit because we could be competing even closer with City if we didn't get as many draws. But that's just something, you know, that looking back on in hindsight's an amazing thing.
Right.
But I do feel like, yeah, in terms of this game, it is so close, and I feel like it's just that narrative of Arsenal, the only English side to have won the Women's Champions League. That's something we want to carry on, and whether we can do that or not, obviously that's quite a big debate. But for you, do you have a score prediction? Obviously this episode will go out on Friday, so it'll go out a few days after the first leg, just before the second leg. Do you have a score prediction for the first leg? And then I guess we can't really predict that far ahead into the second leg, because I feel like tomorrow will definitely indicate a lot.
I think it's going to be 3-1 Arsenal tomorrow.
Okay, hopefully we can manifest that. I feel like it's either going to be Arsenal a few goals ahead, so like a 3-0 or a 4-0, or it's going to be literally a 1-1.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like there's really going to be an in-between. Like
2-1 either way, like, doesn't feel very realistic. Like, I think it's going to either be a draw or kind of like a big. But I'm hopeful that it will be a big win for Arsenal because I don't know. I just feel like there's something gelling with Arsenal right now and has been since like post-Christmas that feels really good in a way that I don't feel that way about Chelsea.
It is actually mad when we're saying, oh, we don't really see them as much of a threat as we have in previous seasons, because when you look at their starting 11, even if you look at their bench, arguably in the WSL, they've got one of the best
unbelievable
squad depths. They've got arguably the best players on the pitch as well. But for us, we almost need to capitalise and focus on ourselves. This is a competition that Slegers obviously knows how to win. She knows how to play two legs of football, if that makes sense, because I feel like last season, when we look at the WSL, we almost needed a second leg for every league game.
Yeah, like we
the
have
following week.
One, actually.
Literally, we're like, can we just add one more in?
Yeah, we'll just go again in 1 week and it'll be fine.
Literally, it just felt like that was sort of what we needed, because that was a format we sort of excelled in. And I feel like for Chelsea, they're good at showing up on that one leg. So I feel like that's something that we obviously need to be prepared for as well. So ultimately, hopefully that this age as well, because I'm the same as you. I go based off vibes, and yes, you can analyse certain things on the pitch, but there does seem to be, like you said, a good vibe of City right now. I think because they don't really have to focus on as many competitions. Chelsea have got a piece of silverware already, and that's one thing that does make me nervous, because even when their form is dipping a little bit, even when we think, okay, Chelsea maybe aren't as good as we think they are, they then go and get silverware, and that's something that is obviously scary, because it just proves that they can sharpen those moments. One competition, though, that I feel like you sort of said just then, like, we found form recently in the league, but I do feel like with the WSL, we've sort of written it off. But when we look at the league table, I'm going to read it out. Man City are in first with 46 points. United are in second with 38 points. Chelsea are in third with 37 points. And Arsenal are in fourth with 35 points. But we've got 2 games in hand. So if we win those 2 games, if we win those 2 games, then we end up going into second spot. And we're only 5 points behind City. Looking at the rest of the season, City have to face United. United have to face Chelsea. We're pretty much clear with that. Are you still thinking that it's realistic that we could come first, or do you think it's more realistic that we will come second? Because we obviously are creeping into City, but with only 4 games for the other teams, only 6 games for us, it's a bit up in the air right now, I'd say.
I think I've written off City winning the league, but I think it's going to be a lot actually closer than we were expecting it to be. I do think that we will push it to the end, assuming that we perform the way that we do and win the 2 games in hand as would be expected that we do, right? Again, those are assumptions that we can't always make, but I do think that based on our form and based on the forms of the teams that Greg says, Leicester and Brighton, I feel like those are games that our girls will turn up for and get the job done, do what they need to do. And so I was actually looking at this, talking about it in January when I was over, because I was looking at who was left the rest of the season after Arsenal had played Chelsea. Like, the other big 3 still all had to play each other. Like, there were lots of big games left for them, whereas Arsenal had sort of, like, done that. They just had City left, I think, or something to that effect. But it was, like, the rest of Arsenal's season looked significantly more favorable than the rest of everyone else's of the top 4 teams. And so I just don't see City losing an unexpected game like they've done in previous seasons based on the form they're in right now. Unfortunately, Sam Coffey, I think, has been great for them. I know she had, like, one rough game, and English fans tend to be really harsh about that. But she is, I think, one of the most underrated holding midfielders in the world. She is fantastic. So I just don't see them letting it slip away like they have in previous years. And I think there are enough people on that team who were in the, 2 seasons ago when we ended up beating City so that then Chelsea won on goal differential or whatever. I don't see them letting it slip away. There are enough players who were on that team who are like, yeah, we're not doing that again.
Yeah. It is frustrating. It is frustrating because I'm like, we're actually so close, and it's weird because I was looking back at the predictions I made at the start this season. I put it on my podcast, which is great for your digital footprint, because I'm like, I said at the start that Arsenal are going to win the WSL and that the men would come third in the Premier League, and it's kind of obviously flipped itself on its head because it's sort of we're not too far off that. But I think at the start of the season, when you looked at, we were getting the likes of Olivia Smith in, Chloe Kelly was going to sign on us permanently. We were getting in these big players, and yes, City have great players. Yes, Chelsea have great players. Obviously, United have arguably the best keeper in the league. But I was like, no, I feel very confident in us. All things looked like they were written. As the season played out at the start, it is a bit unfortunate how it happened that obviously we ended up dropping down a bit. But like you say, there's still hope that we can come second. And if anything, we're in such a good position that we can come second, because I was looking at it, it actually will come down to like the last day of the season between United and Chelsea, like who will get that Champions League spot. Or obviously both right now, as we're speaking, they're both competing still in the Champions League, so either one of them has to win it or they need to come in the top 3, and it's sort of got to be like very extreme. So a lot has to go in their favour for either side to end up coming in the top 3. But ultimately, I just feel like it is kind of a bit of a interesting end to the season. I guess we just sort of have to see how it plays out. But besides the WSL, what are you thinking? Obviously, we've picked up a piece of silverware and Slegers already. Are you thinking she can add to that trophy cabinet this season, or maybe not?
I think that we can. I think we could. I'm feeling good about the FA Cup. I feel like I've been saying this from the beginning of the season. Randomly, I was like, I don't know why, but I just feel like it's our year for the FA Cup, randomly. Which I know has like a lot of significance to like English history. I think here in the US I don't like get it as much, but I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. Like, I get that it's it's a cool thing, the magic of the cup. Like, I understand the concept. I just, don't have like a grassroots team who randomly has like done really well or something like that, so I don't have the same sort of like emotional connection to it. But I just think that would be really fun to play it at Wembley. Like, that would be really fun. And we have so far gotten a relatively favorable draw too. Like the previous seasons, we've drawn top WSL sides earlier on in the competition, and so I'm excited to see if we can sneak this one out. I think it would be fun.
So were you, obviously that answer, you're kind of focusing more on the FA Cup, which a few guests have definitely mentioned before, and like how, imagine walking down Wembley Way and you're going to have a sea of red in Arsenal, and I just feel like it would be so good, and I'm literally picturing it, and so many people have spoken about it that I'm like, hopefully we can manifest this into existence. But yeah, very obviously FA Cup focus. Champions League, that's something we've done. We obviously know that Arsenal can excel in Europe, the only English side to do it. Are you kind of ruling that one out, or are you just saying it's still early days?
I'm not ruling it out. And I would not have said last year that we were going to win it. And so I think,
it's true.
I just think part of it is I'm still very impressed, obviously, with Barcelona. And I think beating a good team twice is like so hard to do, even if it's a year apart, especially with the taste that we left in their mouth last time. Like they're not going to come in gently. But I think we have like a tough road to get there. I think Lyon will feel the same way. They feel slighted. Lindsay Heaps, who is captain of the US men's national team, plays for them. This is her last season with them. She is like the mentality monster of every team that she is on. This is her last season there. She will drag that team to the Champions League final if it's the last thing that she does, if it's possible at all. And so I think there are like emotional things about these games that will make them feel different versus last year. Arsenal was like not in good form in the league. So I think people were like undervaluing us and not showing up in the way that they need to, and they won't get caught doing that again. I think when you are the defender, you are the champion, people show up as their best selves to play you. And I think that was my argument at the beginning of the season of why I was like obviously I wanted us to be winning more games, but like every team is going to show up in their best form to play you because you are the champions of Europe. You are now the champions of the world, right? Like you are the best team. You are the team to beat. And so people show up as their best version, are trying to, in a way that doesn't always happen and isn't sustainable for a lot of teams for like all of the other games, but they're going to put a sort of like target on that game.
Such an interesting point, because when you look to last season, we sort of were the underdogs. Like going into that final, I think everyone was like, well, Barca are obviously going to win it. And I think looking at the fans all over the world that were celebrating, we were just as shocked when that goal went in. We were like, oh my God, have we done this? And it obviously, we ended up doing it. And I think everyone was just so shocked, but knowing that we obviously deserved that and we managed to get through to that final. But yeah, definitely this season, I think it's going to be slightly different because the team's not really changed too much, to be honest. We've still got the same manager. We've got pretty much the same attackers. If anything, we've actually just strengthened our attacking force in Olivia Smith and Chloe Kelly. Obviously, Chloe Kelly was featured in that final. But it's just so interesting that you mentioned that, because the pressure definitely is on us. All eyes are on us, and it's us to beat. So I think this quarterfinal against Chelsea is going to be very nerve-wracking. I'm really hoping this ages well, because I'm so nervous, but I just hope that we can have, obviously, the home field advantage tomorrow, really get that goal difference up, so then obviously it's hopefully calmer for the second leg. We'll just have to see what happens. I feel like with this conversation about the season, we could actually chat so much, because it is getting to those final points where it's so exciting that silverware is basically in reach, but it's like, is it close enough? So hopefully the season sort of plays out how we want it to. I'm just a bit conscious, obviously, of time. And this game, I don't really know if it's going to work, but we're gonna try. I was sort of thinking of it on the bus on the way home from work today. But the game is called Higher or Lower, Emily Fox Edition. So I'm basically going to say a phrase, and then I'm going to give you a number, and you have to say if whatever that phrase is higher or lower. So for instance, if I was like, her shirt number, number 5, is it higher or lower? Obviously the answer is lower, because her number is 2. If you want a bonus point, you can say the exact number. And this is actually probably one of the first games that I've done that's a bit more of a quiz, but you don't need to know the exact number, so I feel like there's no pressure, and obviously it's a player that you speak about very highly, as you should, so hopefully this sort of reflects that, putting her in the spotlight. And obviously this is filmed on the 23rd of March, so some of the stats might change, obviously. If we're talking about Champions League, her playing tomorrow, like things could change with that. So as of today, hopefully my research is all right, and we've got the right answers. Okay, so wait, does that make sense before
Yeah.
before I go?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm ready.
perfect. Okay, I'm scared. So I don't know why I'm scared. You're literally the one answering this. So
I am also scared, so we're in it together.
great, we're in this together. So the first thing is the goals she has scored for Arsenal and number 4. So it's the goal she scored for Arsenal this season. Sorry, this season.
This
Oh
season?
wait, is it this season?
Well,
think
I
I've
can
read
just say she has 3 total goals for Arsenal.
Okay, yeah, that's. I'm glad someone knows what they're doing because.
No,
I've
because
obviously
one of my
just-
favorite goals that I've ever seen is hers, and it's the long range against Tottenham.
I was gonna say, okay, yeah, this makes sense because
Yeah.
I didn't actually put the specifics. So I was like, okay, this has got to be the goals.
No, she only
overall.
has 3 total, and I think it was 2 last season and 1 this season.
Yes, but obviously that North London derby goal because that is such a big rivalry. I know it's obviously more prominent in the men's game than it is in the women's, but it's still a big goal to score. And I think I've heard her speak in interviews saying that's her favourite goal. So
Yeah.
100%, it was obviously lower than the number I gave you. The second thing is yellow cards received this WSL season, and the number is 8. Is it higher or lower?
8. I feel like she kind of gets a lot of yellow cards. She's a defender. But 9? Wait. I think it's lower because she hasn't had to sit out a game, and don't you have to sit out a game when you get 5?
Oh, maybe actually. Yeah, I mean, she hasn't got a red, that's all I know.
Yeah, I
obviously.
know she hasn't gotten a red. I'm
Yeah.
gonna say lower.
It is lower. She's actually only got 2 this WSL season.
Really?
And
Maybe
I
she
feel like as a
always did
defender, that kind of
really
shocked me because I was like, I feel like you have to
Why?
foul like tactical fouls in moments, but
well. No,
it's
she's
only
that
2.
good. She doesn't have to.
She
And
doesn't
she's
have
so
to.
fast. People underrate her speed. She's crazy. Anyways.
It's true. It is true. Talking, obviously, we've just previewed the Champions League. How many appearances has she made in the Champions League this season? I'm going to give you the number 5. So is it higher or lower than 5?
And they had 6 games before. Did she play in all of the games? But did she play in less than 2 of the games? I'm going to say lower.
It's actually higher. She's had
Yeah.
all the appearances.
I think she didn't start maybe in 2 of them. I think Smilla started
Yeah.
in one of them, at least
That's,
one
yeah, I
of
think it
them.
was a couple she didn't start, but even
Yeah.
I was like, an appearance is an appearance. So
An
get it,
appearance
girl.
is an appearance. It's true.
Exactly. And this is sort of linking to appearances. Number 4 is how many starts in the WSL, not this season, but last season. I'm going to give you the number 20. Is it higher or lower? So this is across the whole of the 24-25 season.
And there are 12 teams, so there are 22 games.
Quick maths.
I think it's higher.
It is.
Yeah.
She started 21 of them, which is
Yeah.
impressive when you think about how many games that
She's
is.
crazy.
And I think that just shows that obviously she gets a little overlooked because it is someone that is consistently there.
Mm-hmm.
And because she does her job so well, you kind of forget. You're like, oh, she's just there. She's doing her
She'll
thing.
do it. Foxy will
Exactly.
do it.
Exactly. And the final one is Champions Leagues 1. The number I'm giving you is 0. Higher
Well,
or
it's
lower?
higher. She has 1.
Hopefully, though, end of the season, this ages. You never
Hopefully
know.
it's way higher. Way higher.
Hopefully it goes so much higher. But yeah, that was the little game just to end it off because I feel like we have to spotlight Emily Fox as the current only, obviously, American girlie in the Arsenal squad. So obviously, spotlight her.
Yes. I do appreciate it because I'm a big fan. And I just think she's so, yeah, like, as I keep saying, underrated, overlooked because she's just so consistent, the number of minutes that she plays. She's not, like, flashy about it, you know? Like, we all know and recognize how much Katie McCabe played last season, too. Like, all of that is true. Katie's just a little flashier person, player, like, all of that. And I think Emily Fox just goes under the radar a little bit.
She's like quietly confident. That's how I'd probably describe her, and I think that's quite a nice way to be because it's like, you know, she knows what she's doing and you know she knows her worth with it, but she's, yeah, like you said, she's not out there with it all the time or outspoken, but she just gets on with it, does it, and, you know, she excels in it. So, yeah. Cute little way to end the pod. I really appreciate you coming on. And obviously I will plug everything in the description below, obviously, for your podcast. So everyone should definitely check it out because it's just nice, like, escapism, I feel like, as well, putting you into the world, but through a different way and through a different lens of, obviously, football and sport as a whole. So everyone definitely check it out. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Of course. I feel like it's actually flown by. I was like, yeah, it'll probably only be like 40 minutes. An hour later, I'm like, oh my God, I've eaten into your day.
I forgot I'm a yapper, so...
No, I feel like I could yap forever. That's why I feel like that's what people who yap, they create podcasts. Like, I feel like it goes hand in hand. If you like talking and you like chatting to your friends and people, create a podcast. Like, it's basic. I think that's what we're all doing. So,
Yes.
It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, no, thank you obviously for coming on, Brigitte, and thank you for anyone who's watching or listening, however you're accessing this pod. I'll have another episode, obviously just me on Tuesday, and then another guest talk about their journey with Arsenal and the season as a whole next week. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching.